You're listening to Good Shepherd Brentwood's Sermon Feed. Today's sermon was preached by Father Fred Schmidt and recorded on Easter Sunday, April 9th, 2023.
Friends, this morning we continue our series on the Nicene Creed, and we focus on the final words of the Creed. I believe in the resurrection of the body and life everlasting. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be always and everywhere acceptable to you, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Please be seated. Providential, isn't it, that our series should end this way on Easter? No planning there at all. I cannot argue that I have suffered more loss than others. Yes, I have lost both of my parents, my younger brother, and some of my closest friends. I have been through unemployment twice. And I have had my fair share of time in the hospital. Enough of those trips, in fact, involved broken bones that my brother, who was an orthopedic surgeon, once described me as an annuity. But most of the challenges that I have faced could be classified as first world problems. They cannot be compared with those who live in war zones, with those who grapple daily with life-threatening illness or handicaps, or with those who wonder today whether they will be alive tomorrow. But I do pay attention to life's pain and frayed places. And paying attention has convinced me of this: the joy of Christ's resurrection is a fraud if it does not speak to the places where life is hard. It is important, then, not to confuse the joy of the resurrection with happiness, optimism, or escape. Happiness is about finding a constant high. It's about riding the crest of a wave. It is nurtured by security, and it knows nothing about life's hard places. A pastor who lives in a 10,000 square foot home and jets around the country in a private plane, promising that God will make you healthy, wealthy, and wise, is not preaching the joy of the resurrection. Optimism is about playing the long odds, about hoping that circumstances will be different or improve. Optimism talks about the arc of history, about things that don't or can't happen, about legislation that will change things forever. It knows nothing about the loss of life, young and old, about wars that look just like the old ones, about school shootings, or lifelong illness. And escape is a get-out-of-jail-free card. It is about denial and Woody Allen. I'm not afraid of dying. I just don't want to be there when it happens. The joy of Easter, by contrast, is something else entirely. It is about God in human flesh, about a God who voluntarily sides with us, a God who sheds heaven and steps into our skin. Resurrection joy is about a God who experiences the fear of death and who suffers the torture and degradation served up by the world-class power of his day. He is betrayed and abandoned by his own. He is prosecuted with the connivance of religious leaders. And when he is dead, the tomb is closed up and his mother and his followers go to their homes, just like the friends and families of everyone who dies. What happens next is not something anyone expected. In human experience, the resurrection is not something that follows death. It doesn't make sense. It is not a sequel. It is a reversal. What happens next is the kind of thing that bears a joy that is not about happiness, not about riding the crest of the wave, not about optimism or banking on things getting better, not about escape or getting a get-out-of-jail-free card. It is about a way through misery. It is about conquest. It is about breaking the power of death by experiencing it. And it is there, in the middle of darkness, betrayal, abandonment, and loss, that we discover the true nature of resurrection joy. Christians acknowledge the broken nature of human life. They grieve because they love. They experience loss because they believe that life is the good gift of God. They look death straight in the face. They don't candy coat it. They don't describe it as all just a part of the process. They don't shrug off how ugly life and human beings can be. They march straight back into life with all of its perils because they follow a Savior who has broken the power of death and who now recruits his followers to continue the battle. Loving others, working for justice, grieving alongside those who grieve, binding up wounds, and offering hope. So let me tell you three things about that kind of joy and peace that the resurrection brings. One, it doesn't take any more faith than any other big picture explanation of life's purpose and meaning. Not a bit more faith. This morning, you may be thinking, I don't live by faith. I depend upon the science. You might think that you do. And science is an impressive descriptive tool. But while it can tell us how some things work, there is much more that it does not know. And what it cannot do is explain the existence of the physical universe. The Big Bang Theory, which was developed by a Catholic monk, by the way, can tell us just exactly a particular starting point might have been for the universe, but it cannot explain where the most basic elements of that event came from. The scientific method is, in fact, an open-ended process that shouldn't even have the definite article attached to it. The science of the Middle Ages offered up bleedings and leeches. The science of the 1960s drew targets on your chest and irradiated tissue without discriminating between healthy cells and tumors. And more recent efforts with chemotherapy poisoned the whole body in the name of saving it. So when we say to ourselves, I believe the science, we should acknowledge that as great a gift it is, that there is no such thing as the science, and that it takes a great deal of faith to suggest that it can explain why we exist or what the meaning of that existence might be. But on the other hand, you may not be one of those people. You might be one of those people who say to themselves, I don't live by faith, I believe in the power of politics. Bless your heart. You have my sympathy because you need even more faith. The human race has for millennia experimented with every conceivable form of government, and every change has brought with it grandiose promises. I can almost hear the king of Babylon promising to build back Babylon better. And I can hear the king of Sumer and Akkad offering to make Assyria great again. To be sure, governance is a great thing, and true leaders are a gift, few though they are. But none of them has ever delivered on what matters most to human beings: connection, purpose, and meaning. And the defense this form of government has never really been tried is probably exactly what they said at the Tower of Babel. In addition, human beings, we're broken. We lie, we cheat, we steal, we murder, we commit all sorts of sins. How can we imagine that we can build perfection out of that kind of raw material? Our own system of checks and balances is not a system that was built to ensure perfection. It was built as a safeguard, and there's a reason for it. So when we Christians talk about the resurrection, we are not making an outrageous claim. We are witnessing to the conviction that is inescapable. If there is any hope of healing, life, and well-being, it has to lie in the hands of one beyond us, who subverts the power of death in all its forms, both large and small. The second thing that I would note about the joy of the resurrection is that it cannot be seized, grasped, or earned. It is God's work and God's gift. And the joy that arises out of the promise of the resurrection is a life that is free from the weight of our mistakes and the burden of doubts about our worthiness. There is a little-known story that was deleted from the gospel about a man named Jim Abraham, who, upon arriving in heaven, was asked by the gatekeeper, "What are you doing here? You are a criminal." And Jim looked at him and said, "You're right. I have no defense for being here. I was invited by the guy on the cross next to me." All that to say, if the creation of enduring joy lies beyond us, then finding it as well does too. As a first child and a perfectionist, I can honestly say that that might sound like bad news, but it is really very good news indeed. There is nothing wrong with effort and achievement. It is the engine of endless good, and the best of it is other-directed and lifts up others. But as you have heard me say countless times, there is a God, and we are not. So there is a time and a place to lay down our efforts and to surrender to God's work on our behalf. You may not think that you are there yet. It's particularly common for men to live in denial about that fact, burying their needs in bravado. But there is a lot of truth in the meme I saw not long ago of an old man looking straight at his audience in the face who says, "You young guys, go ahead and do what you want to do, but one of these days, the check engine light is going to come on." Finally, resurrection joy is the kind of joy that cannot be destroyed. I said at the outset that I pay attention to life's hard places, and I'm now old enough to have been in a few of them. What has become clear to me over the years is that there is no person, no place, no moment that we can hold on to. The passage of time, if nothing else, makes that obvious. There are no hearses with luggage racks, There are no moments we can hold on to indefinitely. People change, age, move away, and die. Even the institutions that we build are fading and dying away with regularity. Loving others as much as we can, there is still no escaping loss. There is no preserving the best of moments. This is not to say that we should not try, but that effort only makes sense if somewhere what matters and what is lost is kept safe. And the inevitable change that sweeps away aspirations, love, and memories makes that impossible, with one notable exception: the resurrection of Jesus Christ. You see, the resurrection is not important to the Christian faith because it promises pie in the sky by and by. The resurrection is not important because it promises that beyond the grave we will be known and present to one another, though it does. The resurrection is important because in the resurrection lies the promise that God in Jesus Christ is indeed the author of life, and because in the resurrection Christ has broken the power of death. It is impossible to know what that will look like, but as Christians, we are convinced that everything good and that matters will be restored to us. May Christ embrace you this day and always in the power of the resurrection, and may you know and experience its love and joy.
Thanks for listening. If you're interested in hearing our sermons in real time, you can check us out at our website, www.goodshepherdbrentwood.org, or attend online during our 10:15 Sunday live stream on YouTube. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Good Shepherd Brentwood. If you have any questions or comments, or maybe you'd like to meet with one of our clergy, you can email us at office@goodshepherdbrentwood.org. Or if you're interested in visiting in person or have questions about our programs and services, you can text 615-637-3738, where you'll be contacted by our staff. We'd love to meet you.